Hello and welcome to Poliwood. I'm Roger Simon.
And I'm Lionel Chetwynd.
This week we're pleased to welcome to our studio best-selling author and now filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza, whose documentary 2016 Obama's America, based on the New York Times best-selling book The Roots of Obama's Rage, has made its mark as the second highest grossing political documentary of all time. Dinesh, welcome.
Well, good to be on the show.
And since the first was made by Michael Moore and is therefore not really a documentary, you're the king.
Well, we were thrilled to surpass a couple of his other films, Sicko, and then Bowling for Columbine, and Al Gore's film. It was nice to gallop past those.
Beat Gore, wow.
You beat Gore, we don't need him anymore.
we don't need a recount. That's right.
Look, Dinesh, the film, which really clearly is an extraordinary success, and I think surprised a lot of us who in the beginning, oh, well, yeah, another one of these films, you know, and I've dabbled in that myself. But you approached it, you brought a new series of facts, really, to the fore. The story of colonialism, anti-colonialism, neo-colonialism, and so on. Is there any way you could just quickly sum up that part of the film, which is the basic thesis that you then go on to prove, I think?
Anti-colonialism was the great movement outside of Western civilization in the Third World in the last 100 years. The British Empire controlled a quarter of the real estate on the planet. And then you had all these independence movements in Asia and Africa and South America. And out of that came an ideology. And the ideology was that the rich countries got rich by invading and occupying and stealing from the poor countries. So right away you have the idea here that wealth is not earned. It's not the result of entrepreneurship. It's the result of theft. So that's the first thing, that money has to be given back, and given back not just domestically, but on a global scale. The second idea is that Europe is now no longer the leader. The baton has passed to America. So we, America, we're the bad guys. And that's neo-colonialism because, of course, America isn't actually occupying all these countries, but the idea is we use our economic and cultural power to continue colonialism even when the British and the French armies went home. So the second part of anti-colonialism is you've got to put the leash on America. You've got to pull back not just American wealth, but American power around the world. So that's the ideology, and that was the ideology of Barack Obama Sr., Obama's dad. And in the film, we match it up against the actions of the son.
And by the way, it wasn't just in passing. I just want to point out that it was the dominant argument in this. While America was obsessed by Vietnam and the civil rights struggle, in the rest of the world, by far, this was the issue that put people in the
even
streets.
Vietnam. If you look at Vietnam from the American point of view, it was purely, let's fight communism. But if you think about it, Vietnam was a colony of the French. The French were defeated in '54. They pulled out. America went in. So from Ho Chi Minh's point of view, Vietnam was the last anti-colonial war.
I said to you earlier, and we're going to talk about the making of the movie in a moment. I think your movie got ratified a little bit by Obama's reaction to the events in the Middle East.
Well, sure. Any theory generates a prediction.
Right.
So the prediction of this theory is that Obama is a global guy. He's less concerned with fighting for American interests. What he's trying to do is reduce America's footprint in the Middle East because he thinks we've been stepping on the Middle East. So now you look at all these explosions around the Muslim world, and if you look at all these little dots, it mirrors an image in our film which we call the United States of Islam. And for some people who saw the film for the first time, they're like, the United States of Islam, isn't that a little far-fetched? But now you turn on the news and you're like, that looks chillingly like that same map. It does look like the radical Muslims are on the march. So yeah, I think the theory is vindicated. And it also shows the peculiarity of Obama's behavior shows that you need a theory that explains, you can't just say he's a bungler, because he's pretty effective in getting done the things he wants to achieve. The real question is, what does he want to achieve?
You know, one of the ironies in all this is theoretically this big brouhaha all across the Middle East now was started by a movie. And the movie, which was absolute crap, I saw 6 seconds of it on YouTube. Your movie didn't create any of that, and yet it's really good. It's kind of interesting.
Our movie is called The Convulsion, but it's more in the Obama campaign because they've come out swinging and attacking. Yes. For a while, they were ignoring us. I think they felt
carted off in the middle of the night.
Well, they felt initially the movie would only appeal to conservatives, but now they found it's breaking out, and there are a lot of independents going, there's a lot of stuff in here that we didn't know about Obama, and so I think the campaign's decided to strike back.
Well, it's got them in a very sensitive place. By the way, that map, which also linked you intellectually with Huntington and Islam's bloody borders, really confirm everything you say about this film. What's amazing is that it's out there, you know.
Okay, so speaking of out there, as we were talking earlier, my assumption is a lot of our Poliwood audience has seen your movie. The ones who haven't go see it. However, tell us a little bit about how you got into making it, and then we'll ask you some questions about distributing it and how we can help.
Well, I published The Roots of Obama's Rage a couple of years ago, and a bunch of people, including some conservatives, said to me, Dinesh, how can you say that Obama is so influenced by his father? He only spent a month with the guy, they had a correspondence, but he didn't know him that well. And I'm thinking, haven't you read Obama's book? I mean, he has 450 pages about how this absentee father became an obsession with him. And part of it was, of course, that the image of the father had been cultivated in his mind by his mother. But I was thinking to myself, you know, Obama talks about all this, and then I noticed that Obama read his own book in audiobooks. And so as I was listening to it, I'm thinking, wow, if I can make a film and set Obama's words to music, so to speak, then people will hear from themselves, from the horse's mouth. And then I also thought back, you know, in 2004, Michael Moore made Fahrenheit 9/11. I mean, intellectually, that film was a nullity, but it was dropped into the middle of the election campaign, and it generated a huge debate. So I thought, you know what, I'll take a page out of Michael Moore's book. The conditions are remarkably similar: a controversial president, half the country on each side, anxiety about the future. That's when I got the idea to turn this into a film.
All right, now, we all know about, we talk endlessly on our show about conservative filmmaking. How'd you do it?
You're not the first person to come to
No,
that
okay.
conclusion. And that's what
Right.
How do you get from there to here?
You actually made the movie. Okay, how'd you do it?
Well, the first thing I did was I basically went to some rich people and went through my Rolodex.
First thing, you've got to know some rich people.
All right, well,
Yeah.
make
Well,
a note of
I
that.
said I need some money to make this film, and these are guys who had read my book, and they said, "We'll bet on you, Dinesh. You know, we don't know if you can do this, but we'll bet on you."
They got to like you, believe in you.
Yeah. So they believed in me, and then I said, I don't want to make a film that's like Talking Heads, you know, like a CNN documentary, you know, blah, blah, blah. I want to make a film that's like out of Africa. It's beautiful, has a haunting music. And I said, you know, I have faith in the Obama story. If you think back to Fahrenheit 9/11, there was no George Bush story. And all that Michael Moore had to do was dumb antics, which is what he did. But I said with Obama, there actually is an interesting story. You got this kid who was abandoned by his dad, then basically abandoned by his mom a few years later. And if you look at pictures of Obama at that age, he's an overweight, insecure, extremely shy.
Oh.
Yeah, and he sort of goes on this odyssey to find his father and find himself. And I'm thinking, that's an interesting story of anyone, except it happens to be about the President of the United States. It happens to have all these implications for the world. So the bottom line of it is I went in search of Jerry Molen. I went in search of a guy who I felt would have the credibility and the connections to make a top-notch film.
So he came after the money people.
Yeah.
And it's very important to point out that when you went to the money people, you were Dinesh D'Souza. You were already established as one of the major public intellectuals in the country. You did rank with Murray and Krauthammer and the like. So.
But that's all I had.
Well, that's important.
I mean, I didn't have any experience in the film
Better
world.
than nothing.
Better than nothing.
Okay, now, the next step is, now that the movie is, for a documentary, a huge commercial success, we are 6 weeks out of the election. I think 6. Anyway, what's the plans of you and your producer partners for disseminating the film going forward now? And how can the PJTV audience help if they would like?
Well, the film is, it'll be in the theaters till the middle of October. By our contract with the theaters, we got to be in the theaters for 3 months. And we will be in theaters. In some theaters we'll be in it through the election.
Are you forewarning it? I mean, which is to say, did you go out and rent the theaters and you've taken them over for 3 months?
No, we haven't done any of that. What we did was we had some premieres, and we had some radio guys who would get behind the film and invite their audience to come for free, typically on a Thursday, and then the film would open normally in the theaters on a Friday. We did approach the big theater chains like Regal and Cinemark before the film came out. And we said, look, we have a very unique film with a very unique argument. And it's a high-quality film, and there's going to be a lot of demand because this is a political year. And those guys said to us, look, if you can show that you can bring people to the theaters, you will see that we are no bar to getting this film distributed. And so we've actually found it not difficult to get the distribution as long as we could demonstrate the attendance.
You say you got a hard out, you're guaranteed into 3 months.
Well, now it's the case, you know, normally for films you're trying to stay in the theaters, and we're actually trying, the theaters are asking us to keep it longer because
You're being held over.
Because
So
our
it's not a
first
four-wall.
screen.
Okay.
No.
And you're playing Regal theaters now. You're in Regal.
We're in Cinemark and AMC and Regal.
Okay,
and
now going forward, into the next 6 weeks, do you have any plans to get this out in DVD, on television, community groups, anything?
We've pretty much, you know, we've worked out a deal with a big distributor to get the DVDs out en masse. So the good thing is the film will be available, and you know, in Walmart and Target and all the retail chains. It'll be available on video on demand. It'll be available for downloads, home box. It'll all be out there. Now, so that creates a real opportunity because now it's available in these other formats. We want people to go to the theater, by the way. We want people to go to the theater because it's so important, particularly for this kind of film that's against the grain, to demonstrate that it can do well at the box office. So we're not done with that by any means. But that being said, there will be a window, and it's not a big window, but it's a window nevertheless, for this film to be distributed in any which way. And there are all kinds of people looking at it to see, how do I get it to these guys, and how do I get it to those guys, and wouldn't it be great if young people saw it, and wouldn't it be wonderful if it was playing in college towns? And you know, we've had guys who say, I'll buy out the theater and let the college students come in, and I'll give them popcorn and a Coke, and we're like, be our guest. That's, you know, we'd love to see people use their influence to get this film out very widely.
When Dave Bossy did 4111, Craig and I were involved with, someone purchased 37,000 copies and distributed it at the Ohio State football game on the Saturday before the election in return for showing a valid Ohio driver's license with an address. Get someone to do that. It can be very effective.
Well, our film was the talk of the RNC. I went down to Tampa, and everybody was like, this film is a very powerful intervention in the argument. Remember, the Romney guys are taking a very narrow approach. Their approach is Obama is a smart guy, he's a nice guy, he just has the wrong ideas for America. So we're the only ones, in a sense, who are saying, wait a minute, we're the only one looking behind the curtain. Who's Obama? Who's the man behind the mask?
Well, you actually make him spokesman for a huge movement. One of the things he's always presented himself as is a cause that's special. I'm special, I'm different. I'm not like that, I am above it all.
Well, that's
and you're proving you know, above it all? Oh no, well, you've been pushed up, you've been vomited up by this morass. I'm sorry.
Part of what's so funny is that the liberals in 2008 were like, Obama's unique, he's multicultural, he's got a special background, he brings all this insight, and all we're doing is we're saying, we agree he's unique, we're going to show you how unique he really is and what multiculturalism really means, and now they're trying to shut the door on that. They're saying, why are you going into his past? Why are you looking into his background? I'm like, isn't he the guy who wrote about his background? Wasn't he circulating dreams from my father as a campaign biography? By the way, he's never repudiated that book. He's never said, I was young and I did some foolish things and I hung out with some communists and some domestic terrorists, but you know, that was my past.
Right, he hasn't repudiated it. What do you think of the theory that he didn't even write all of it?
Well, these theories are out there. And look, you know, there's a theory that Bill Ayers wrote his book. There's another theory that Frank Marshall Davis was his real dad. And all I'm saying is, look, if you have a theory like that, you have a very heavy burden of proof, right? It's like if I came out and said, you know, Chelsea Clinton is not the Clinton's daughter, you'd be like, prove it, Dinesh, where's the DNA? So all I'm saying is, the good thing about our film is we stay away from that stuff. We just say, we're going to follow the Obama story as he tells it. And one of, I think, the most powerful aspects of the film is just at critical points when you're beginning to think, is that really true? You get Obama's own voice saying,
yes.
Oh yes, when I was in college, I stayed away from all the normal guys and I looked for the Marxists and the punk rock poets and all the crazy guys and those were my pals, and you're like,
that is its strength.
It's
you
from
take
the
him
horse's
exactly
mouth.
at his own word, specifically dismiss the birther charges right in the beginning. You take him exactly as he presents himself. You don't try to put any shape on him. That's a big difference from Michael Moore, who always tried to. There are no straw men. You know, his claim, which is bicultural and biracial and all of these things, I think it's very interesting.
I have an idea that we should do. We should nominate Dinesh for Best Original Screenplay at the Writers Guild, like Moore won.
Let's do it.
You guys are really naughty.
All right, on that note.
We have a right to do that.
Yes, we do.
I think it was an amazing piece of work.
Dinesh, thank you for being here today.
You're the best.
It's a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
If you haven't seen his movie, head to the theaters to watch it. 2016 Obama's America. You can
And
find
take your friends with you, your liberal friends.
You can find Dinesh online by visiting his website, DineshD'Souza.com. And if you want to tweet at him or see his tweets, he's on Twitter as @Dinesh D'Souza. Next week, Rotten Tomatoes, Matt Atchity will be back with us again for his weekend report. Until then, I'm Roger Simon.
And I am Lionel Chetwynd.
We'll see you next week in Poliwood.
A very smart salute just for you.